Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Well, as you can see on the map, we find ourselves in the western portion of the Ukraine, a site of a recent Russian killjoy attack against Ukrainian, we suspect, uh, a area where the Ukrainians are utilizing Storm Shadow and other missile systems against Russian targets. Obviously, as an air base, you can clearly see that the aircraft that are being stationed at this air base are Su-24s. They're in all probability as well as MiG-29s and Su-27s being launched from this base as well. But this base has been hit a number of times over the course of the conflict, and no, those holes are not impact craters that you're seeing there. Those are another way of getting into the earthen bunker. But again, another series of strikes by Russian missile systems. The Ukrainians will not even report that this base has been hit. You have to get local observers on the ground that are aware that the site was in fact struck. Now, Zelensky apparently did not have a very good meeting with the powers that be in Washington, D.C. and New York at the United Nations. Apparently, his path to quote unquote victory is unimpressive. Now, what does that mean? Are we seeing the first stages of the powers that be in the ununited states, the disunited states, start to separate themselves and back away from Volodymyr Zelensky? Quite possibly. Quite possibly. Look, the United States intelligence organizations, the United States military, has the ability to look and see what Russia is preparing for. The United States can clearly see that Russia is in this for the long game, that Russia is enlarging its military and for all intents and purposes plans to prosecute this war for many years if need be. Now, we don't think the war is going to last many more years. In all probability, we will see something happen probably over the winter and then into early to the middle of next year, which is going to change the dynamics of this conflict. Look, we're already starting to see, as I've talked about before, some of the doctrine changes within the Russian Air Force, right? The use of these extended range glide bombs. No one here in the United States and in the Ukrainian militaries really has the ability right now to negate what the Russians are using in terms of those weapon systems. It just doesn't exist. Yes, the Ukrainians can defend certain areas such as Kiev and other areas with the limited amounts of Patriots that have been sent to the Ukrainians. But outside of that, they really don't have a way to stop what is happening on the front lines. Again, masses of artillery, multiple launch rocket systems, and more importantly, the deployment of the GLONASS guided glide bomb. This is a very important element of this conflict. And the U.S. military can see that the Russians are not backing down. and they plan on taking this war for many, many years. Now, that translates into an economic issue. Is the United States, is this current so-called administration, or the cabal that runs the United States right now, are they willing to hand over $100 billion every 6 months to the Ukrainians? Probably not in perpetuity. And then compounding that is the prosecution of the war by the Russians. Outside of direct NATO intervention, and what I mean by that, look, NATO is already intervening. What I am talking about is French Rafales, United Kingdom Typhoons, American low observable F-22s, F-35 Lightning IIs operating against Russian forces. Right now, that is the only way that the Ukrainians may be able to stop Russian forces. Now, we all know what happens if that occurs, right? If we see Typhoons, if we see Rafales, if we see American F-22s over Ukraine, well, that's World War III. You will see an expanded war, an expanded conflict. The United States hasn't seen an expanded conflict with a near-peer adversary in quite some time. And this war would not just be isolated to the Ukraine. There'd be maritime ramifications. There'd be sites struck around the world, sites of significant interests to the United States. And right now, I think certain elements in the U.S. government see where this conflict is heading. And it is, in fact, heading towards global war. The way the alliances are setting up right now, the United States, its allies, China, the Russian Federation, Iran, even if the pause button is hit on the Ukrainian war, I think there's a really good chance that the conflict will raise it. This global conflict, this global adversarial relationship between these two alliances that are now forming, East versus West, the old United States versus a rising China. It's happening. But again, very interesting to see what is happening with the snubbing of Volodymyr Zelensky's path to victory, because it's really not a path to victory. It's really a path to a rapid escalation of the conflict. Essentially, Zelensky would like to launch cruise missiles and various weapon systems handed over to him by his Western allies against targets in downtown Moscow. And that is going to expand the conflict, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I think at this point, there are elements in D.C. that are saying, well, wait a minute here. We really got to hit the pause button. Because the track that we are on right now takes us to a place that we probably don't want to go. And ultimately, I think the current Ukrainian leadership, there will have to be a change. And the Ukrainians, the Western nationalist Ukrainians, are going to have to accept the fact that they are going to have to concede territory. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. There's no other outcome in which this scenario doesn't include the loss of Ukrainian territory. The concept that the end of this war means Russia is evicted from the Crimean Peninsula and the Ukrainian army retakes the Donbass is a non-starter. That is not going to happen. It is so nonsensical, and so far-fetched and so far outside the realm of sanity that the Ukrainian army is going to have to come to the conclusion that that goal, those military objectives, are just asinine, completely and utterly asinine. And again, like I said, prior to the loss of Crimea, right, hypothetically saying, right, Russia will use tactical nuclear weapons. Russia will go nuclear before it loses Crimea. Russia is not going to lose Crimea. In all probability, right now, the real war goal for Russia is, and I've talked about this before, east of the Dnieper River, and quite possibly the taking of Odessa. Odessa is very, very important to Russia. Very important. So key war goals for Russia: Odessa, east of the Dnieper. I think Kharkov, very, very important. And the Ukrainians are talking about taking the Crimea. I mean, again, it's so asinine and so insane where this war could quite possibly take us. It's really incredible. Had the opportunity, I think I had mentioned this in a past video, to watch the movie Threads. For whatever reason, it was a complete miss. I didn't even know the movie existed. Watched it, an incredibly brutal movie, man. I tell you what, if you watch that movie, and I think that movie should be required watching for high school age students here in the ununited States. But if you haven't seen it, check it out. On par, probably more. Well, not probably, is much more brutal than the movie the Day After from back in the 80s, which this movie was produced as well. So there you have it. Thanks for joining us today. More to come very soon. As always, have a good day.